Hi, and welcome to Podcasting 101 with Rachel. This podcast is for busy female entrepreneurs who run their own businesses and want to start a podcast, or who may already have a podcast. I want to share practical information and tips on how you can get your podcast started and managing it along the way. I'll also be interviewing other female podcast hosts to give you real insight into what it's like having your own podcast. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. Today I have Devin Lee with me. Welcome, Devin.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me on.
It's lovely to have you on my podcast today. Sorry, get back in the swing of podcasting. We're recording this mid-January in 2023, so everyone getting back in the flow after the holidays. Do you want to just introduce yourself, Devin? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. My name is Devin Lee, as I've said. I'm a certified online business manager and a certified Dubsado specialist. And so my two main offers are I set Dubsado up for folks. We create ideal client journeys for their businesses, and then we put them on autopilot using a CRM called Dubsado. And then I also have my quarterly planning party where we take every quarter, a group of us all get together for a big planning day, and we take our visions and our dreams and we turn them into strategic plans that we can actually get done. And then over the next 12 weeks, we use community and co-working to actually get those plans done.
Yes, and I particularly love your rocket fueled plan, quarterly planning. I did myself last year, which I will talk a little bit more about it later, but I thoroughly enjoyed the experience and would highly recommend this to definitely motivate you and help you with your accountability, because that was a real big thing I found really helpful. So I wanted Devin to come on and talk to you guys because Devin has featured on quite a lot of different podcasts talking about her zone of genius, and it got me thinking about, obviously it's a great way to create more visibility in your business, getting on other people's podcasts because you're getting in front of their audiences. So I also thought it might be quite a good strategy for someone who is thinking about starting a podcast and either might not have time to create the podcast themselves at the moment, or would just kind of like to see whether they enjoy podcasting. So maybe they could like guest on a few podcasts and really kind of get the feel of what it's like a little bit more in action. And as I say, Devin's featured on quite a few podcasts, so I thought it would be really nice just to have Devin on, just to share her experience a little bit about what it was like pitching to different podcasts. And I've got a few things that I've been doing as well. So what was your main reason for wanting to get on other people's podcasts? Was it to increase the visibility of your business? Was that the main kind of reason?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone's kind of default for marketing is social media, of course, like it's a necessary evil. But I don't know anyone who let me rephrase that because I have some social media manager friends. I know very, very few people who love social media. And I, at times, love social media. Like when I have time and space and creativity, I love making TikToks and Reels. I love interacting. I love the community. But like it's a lot of energy to do social media. The algorithm's always changing. It's really chaotic. It's really stressful. And so I was looking for other ways to market. My other superpower is like networking and relationship building. I love making friends. I'm aggressively friendly. And so I had networking as like a strong, one-to-one connection, but I wanted another kind of piece of the pie for my marketing. And so I saw podcasting as a way to kind of connect with other people, maybe even bring them to my, when I want a podcast, I thought, okay, maybe this can be a way to bring someone to my Instagram, bring someone to my TikTok, get someone on my email list. And then from there, I can do my other marketing efforts. So it's kind of just a way to kind of use something I already feel like I enjoy and like doing and am good at to market my business.
That's really smart and a different way to look at it. I guess I wouldn't have looked at it like that before, because I'm the same as you with social media. There are times that I love social media and there are times that I find it very draining and very kind of hard to keep up with. And I love podcasts, obviously, as you know, wanting to start this podcast and being a podcast manager. And I just think that's a really smart way to look at another way to get into helping market yourself and your business. What was, did you start out on your own? Did you have some help? Did you kind of go into research mode when you first decided to get yourself on these podcasts?
Yeah, I kind of started out on my own and I felt really insecure. I'm not great at I struggle with messaging for myself. Like that's one of the things I try and outsource. So I was going on podcasts, but I didn't really know what to talk about. I didn't know how to connect it to my offers and I felt really nervous. So I actually hired someone who's now my business coach. Shout out to Natalie Kusa. Her business is called Uncommon People. She's amazing, and she used to have a podcasting VIP day where we figured out all my talking points and my bio, and she kind of taught me how to find the podcast and all that good stuff. So once I had, she really helped me connect my messaging to what I'm offering, so I'm not just going on podcasts just for the hell of it. And that really changed. And once I had that solidified, I felt really confident reaching out to podcasts and kind of taking it from there.
Yeah, that is what I have been trying to think about myself. So when I set myself the challenge of getting on 10 podcasts this year, I don't know how I haven't actually sent my pitches through yet, but that was the target that I gave myself. And that was kind of the piece that I was trying to figure out, is to looking at the person's podcast and their audience and the types of episodes they've done and trying to work out what is it that I can offer their audience that also benefits me as well. Like, for example, would this person's audience want to find out about how to start a podcast, or for you with your planning sessions or your Dubsado knowledge and genius there. So I think that's something that I did listen to a few different podcasts on in preparation for pitching as ever. But yeah, that's trying to think about it a bit strategically, I think, rather than just willy-nilly going pick this, pick that. Did you listen to a lot of episodes of the people that you were pitching to, or did you kind of do a cold pitch, or how did you kind of approach it?
Yeah, I did a little bit of both. I started out I had a whole playlist of podcasts that I was interested in, and then I would listen to a few different episodes. And then I quickly found out that takes so much time because I was trying to pitch to a lot of podcasts at once. I really, put my nose to the grindstone. So what I ended up doing is when I would find a podcast, well, first I did some you can kind of tell in your research just by reading about the podcast, okay, do they have guests often? If they only have solo episodes, don't reach out. And then, I'd read about, the episode, maybe try and see, just skimming what their values are, and kind of from there see if they could be a good fit. And then, sometimes I'd listen to the whole episode, but sometimes I would listen to maybe just the beginning and maybe just the end to get the feel of the episode. And at first I was really nervous to do this. I felt a little I was cheating or a little guilty, but then I found out that hosts don't really care. I think they understand that you're just trying to get on, you don't have time to listen to every single episode. So I try to listen just a little bit to get the feel so I'm not wasting anybody's time. But I stopped listening to the whole episode because there were so many that I was kind of sifting through. But then I would always, of course, listen to my episode after it came out. So I was cheating a little bit.
Yeah, I started with listening. I just created a Spotify playlist that had quite a lot of episodes, and I just thought, this is going to take quite a while. But I did want to... I suppose when you get into the flow of things, it gets easier to kind of work out whether or not you think that you're a good fit for this particular podcast. I wanted to try and find kind of a genuine connection with the podcast, or a genuine thing that I could say. So I've been taking a little look at their website and their social media account and just see what kind of things, like you say, their values and what they're doing, to try and genuinely think, do I want to be associated, quote unquote, with this particular podcast and not, do they align like with yourself and what you believe in? And I haven't sent mine yet because I'm a little nervous about sending mine out too. But I think you're right. As a host, if I turn the tables, if somebody came to me with pitching a guest to me, and I felt like it was not like a stock message, and it was somebody that genuinely had like taken the time to think about my business and what my podcast is about, then I would think, well, that's all you can kind of ask for, I think, as somebody to guess that actually seems genuinely interested. So I think it's just taking a bit of time thinking about that you're actually interested in, show the person that you're pitching to that you're interested in what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you can find out enough of the podcast to create a message that is authentic and genuine, and not because they can tell when it's just like a stock, like you were saying, and that's a turn off. However, I will say, if I have time the day of the recording, I'll go listen to an episode while I'm getting ready or whatever, just to get the feel of what's going on. Because I think another thing that was happening is I was listening to all these episodes of podcasts that, I'd pitch and then I'd never hear back. And I go, oh gosh, I just wasted 50 minutes listening to 2 episodes. So it's nice to listen to them if you know for sure you're going to be on. But I think also just coming to terms with okay, what's my success rate with pitching? Do I want to spend twice as much time listening to episodes if I don't need to?
That's true. So how many would you say podcasts that you've pitched to that you've been successful? Do you have a quote? Do you have targets every month you'd like to pitch to, or is it not as regimented as that, or what's your kind of...
I actually have my Airtable database open. I was so regimented about it for 3 months last year, and then I kind of fell off, but I'm going to get back on it again. So I don't have the up-to-date data, but I forget. I think I had a goal of pitching I don't know, something like 10 a month. I can't remember. I was trying to at least pitch a few a week, and I think my success rate was 50% because I was really trying to pitch podcasts that would have me. And also, if I was having a coffee chat with someone and I learned they have a podcast, I go, all right, I'm just going to pitch you right now. That's why I'm doing it. And that always had a really good success rate because, we'd be friends at that point. And so...
Yeah. That's a nice way to do it as well because it's face to face.
Right, exactly. And then they get a feel for how you talk. And so that's really easy. Yeah, any friends that have podcasts, it's so much easier. Or if if someone whose podcast I wanted to be on, if we had a mutual connection, I'd say, hey, could you give me an intro? That was really helpful. But I did try. It's one of those things, I think, where you can't have your goal be, at first at least, you can't have your goal be, I want to be on this many podcasts. You have to have your goal be, I want to pitch this many podcasts.
Right,
and
yes.
then take it from there. Because otherwise you might get discouraged, especially when you're first figuring things out.
That is true. So with me saying 10 podcasts, I might not get 10 podcasts, but I should have a kind of switch that goal up and aim to pitch X amount of podcasts a month or a quarter or anything. That would be a more positive way. And I suppose it's a good, it's always a good learning experience to see what response you get and what reply, whether it's a no and how they say it or how you could have done it better. I'm interested to know, I've read a few things about people pitching with a video. Have you ever done a video pitch, or do you do just like an email, nicely crafted email?
I've never thought to do an email pitch. That's actually a good idea. What I do is, I've never done an email pitch, but what I will do is I have a Spotify playlist of all the podcasts I've been on in the past. I love that. So I link that. So you can get a feel for how I talk. I think I did, this is not related to podcasts, I think I did a video pitch for a client I was trying to get when I was an online business manager on retainer. And I think I was too much of a goofball. I think I brought too much energy because they were no way, we don't want to talk to you. But that's my style. I'm really high energy. And so anyways... So I wonder how that would translate to pitching to podcasts.
Yeah, I just read, it was an interesting blog or article that I read about, because as well they can see, maybe if you were pitching for a video that had a video podcast as well, that might kind of work well, because you could show them you kind of know how to use the tech and make it good to watch and listen to, perhaps. I think it's something to consider if you're good on video. If you don't feel comfortable on video, then obviously not. Don't like force yourself to do videos. That doesn't kind of make sense. But I'm just trying to think what else. So like one of the things that I did when I was just looking for like finding podcasts, because I have found it's the same as when you're trying to find, you know, quote unquote, your ideal client and sift through the people on your network. So I kind of tried to start with, like you said, close connections and kind of work my way out. I actually, Devin, use you as my close connection to try and all the different podcasts you were on. So I was looking at those to see whether or not any of those might be a good fit for me, and then I could use you as my inroad. So that was one.
I love that anytime.
So thank you so much for that. And I love the fact that you do the Spotify playlist. I really love that. And I think that makes it so easy for someone to find all of those different podcasts that you're on. And it's definitely a tip that you guys should take away with you. That when you're on the podcast, you can have that on your website, and then people can just like go and listen to it. So what would be your kind of tip for like finding the podcast? Like start with your connections and like work outwards. Is that like the best with my hands?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started, I signed up for all those like, I don't even know what they would call it. You know, the like podcasting profiles where you get sent whatever.
Yeah, matchmaker.fm's one, isn't it?
And,
yeah.
And I you know, I don't want to speak poorly if it's worked for someone else, but I was on like 5 different ones. I found 0 success. So I don't know. So I personally wouldn't try that again. But yeah, I went through literally all my connections, you know, through my email list, different groups I was in, and just said, okay, who do I know who has a podcast? You know, and kind of, if they did, I'd reach out. Or I even, you know, colleagues I respected, I would, you know, see if I'd search their name, like in Spotify, like their name and podcast, and then I'd find podcasts they had been on.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And then that way you can also, you know, ask them for an intro. And then it just kind of spiraled from there, where if I was on if I got on a podcast and it was a good fit, then I would kind of see who their other guests were. And then I'd research all the podcasts they had been on. I'd ask, you know, colleagues of mine what podcasts they like to listen to. Like you just start to get really creative. And then all of a sudden you have like a million podcasts to apply to. You can really go down the rabbit hole. There's so many podcasts out in the world.
There are so, yeah, I found that when I started, I think getting started, I felt like it was quite difficult, but then because then when I actually kind of I think I spent like a good hour and a half, and once I'd started to do it, I actually felt more comfortable as I went on. Like you say, you kind of go down the rabbit hole. So I think a little bit of advice maybe to those of you that are wanting to do this is to kind of maybe schedule out a bit of time, you know, a good few hours, so you can kind of get going. And once you get going, you can make a bit more progress, rather than kind of saying, oh, I'm just going to do it for 15 minutes maybe, or 5 minutes. I mean, obviously if that's all you can do, that's fine, but I felt like a big chunk of like an hour or 2 was kind of like a good time to get into, especially if you're listening to maybe, you know, like little bits or flicking through lots of different episodes. It can take a little bit of time. But yeah, I think I'm going to limit the amount of episodes I'm going to listen to, because there's just too many. I love podcasts anyway, and it's quite discovering loads of different people's podcasts is so interesting, and to see how they're doing things and what things people are doing. I think one thing to look at as well, I know I've heard of podcast hosts talking about people who pitch their old podcasts and things like that, or don't check whether the podcast is actually still running right now, because if some of them, if you don't check the episodes, they might not have posted in a while, or maybe you should send an email like, you know, are you coming back for another season or something like that, rather than just like, so those little things to watch out for and not get tripped up on those little factors.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. There have been so many times where I go, oh, this is a great fit, and then I see their last episode was like 3 years ago. But I've never thought to email them to ask if they're going to do another season. That's a really good idea. I like that.
I just thought of that. I just thought, because some of them, if they Oh, the brilliant that just popped into my head then actually, because I thought, oh yeah, you could. If it wasn't, I mean, obviously it's 3 years ago, they probably won't. But if it's like for me now, I haven't. So since Christmas, I haven't published any new episodes. So maybe perhaps somebody looking to pitch me might not, and they might not have come across me saying I'm gonna start again in February. So they might go, oh, are you gonna have an bang on the table, have another season or something like that, I guess. Not that I've had anybody pitch to come on to my show.
You never know. If anyone's
true.
listening to this and Rachel hasn't posted in a while, just reach out. She might be doing
just
a season
reach
2.
out. Yeah. But also if you're a podcast host, I would love to hear all different people's stories about podcasting and how they found it. So this is such valuable information, Devin. Thank you so much for sharing. What would be kind of like your biggest learn from pitching for podcasts?
Ooh, the thing that so many things. One thing I learned is it's another lesson in it gets easier over time. My first podcast I was so nervous, and as far as I know, that host never published that episode. I don't know for sure, but I think she just never used it. And it might have been because I was tripping over my words. And you know what? That's okay, because every podcast I've been in since has been published. And, the host always makes me sound good because they edit all my stumbles. And the more I did the podcast, the more I, knew my talking points by heart and could be more conversational. So if you feel nervous about podcasts, it gets easier. And the other thing I really liked about it is it gave me more confidence to pitch to speaking at summits, which I've done 1 or 2 of, and also being asked to speak in private groups, which has been really nice. And, so now it's become a tool for not just podcasting, but also these other places that I can get in front of audiences that might connect with me. And also it's just been a good networking tool. There's been a few hosts more than a few, where I just feel like we're friends now. We keep in touch, and then they refer me to other people for speaking opportunities and what have you. And so I feel like it's one of those things where, yes, the initial goal is to speak on podcasts, but then all these other benefits come from it, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love that all those benefits come from that first need to want to get on whatever the reason is behind it. That's brilliant. We also were going to talk a little bit about, which I also think will be great for you guys out there, Devon's rocket fueled quarterly planning. So I felt like this might be a really good fit for somebody who, I used it myself, not just for podcasting, but podcasting was part of that when I wanted to do my quarterly planning. So for those of you that are looking for some accountability and to get things done in your business or for your podcast, I'll let Devin tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, so Rachel, actually, since you've been in the program, the name has changed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's changed. So you didn't know. That's okay. It's kind of newer. So yeah, now it's called the Quarterly Planning Party, because rocket fueled business planning, et cetera, was so long, and also the name kind of had this. I know, I loved it too. I really did love that first because it had so much energy behind it. But then I realized, rocket fueled, it kind of reminded me of hashtag hustle culture.
Okay, yeah.
So Quarterly Planning Party felt a little bit more on brand for me. We're just having a party, we're having fun. I think when people think of something like quarterly planning, it doesn't sound very sexy. It sounds a little boring. It sounds like, ooh, we have to take our medicine. But I think it can be fun. And I think it can feel really good. So yeah, like I said before, we have a big planning day where I guide people, in a group. So we're doing it together. I guide folks through step by step how to make this 12-week plan. And then we put it in our calendar. We put it in our project management tool. It's set, it's ready to go. And then we have the support over the next 12 weeks to get it done that quarter. And I think anything to do with podcasting is a great project for a quarterly plan, because the focus of the Quarterly Planning Party is usually those projects that, obviously client projects, you're going to get done. That's why you have your business. Those are usually top of mind. But then there's all those other little projects or big projects that are important, but maybe not necessarily urgent. Like your business isn't going to fall apart if you don't start a podcast or if you don't apply to podcast, but like, will it be sustainable if you don't do those things? Or would podcasting in any form maybe bring your business to the next level because of the visibility it would give you, but you just can't seem to get started? That's a perfect project to put on your quarterly plan and get it done. So projects like that are great. And there's lots of different elements of the program that kind of, like you were saying, accountability and just like the know-how of like, how do we actually get stuff done? Because we're not really taught that in school. How do we just get stuff done? How do we focus? And so there's a lot of, little lessons and speakers and guidance along the way as well to support getting everything done.
I love that. I loved the first session where we actually decided on our plan, and I really liked you guiding us through it as well and having time to implement it in between. And because for me at that stage, I hadn't really done my quarterly planning before, or I hadn't really stuck to it, and it did make me think, well, I've never really done one before. So that was really valuable. And I did really like I'm still in touch with actually I haven't emailed her this year, but the accountability buddy that I had when I did, Andrea. So we do email each other occasionally and stuff still now, which is really nice. So I really enjoyed it. It was a great bunch of people there. So if that's something that you're looking at doing, I would highly recommend Devin and her planning party.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was so fun when you were in it. I mean, it's still fun now, but as the program continues, people come in and it always changes the culture of it. So it was so fun when you were there.
Well, the next quarter will begin in April. So in the show notes, I will leave the links so you can get in touch with Devin and you can find out any more information about it if you have any questions. I'll leave all those in the show notes so everyone can just get in touch with you easily.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel.
Oh, thanks so much for coming on, Devin. And what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, so my website is devinlee.com, devinlee.com, where you can see my offers. You can download my free workbook about creating an elevated client journey. And if you're on Instagram or TikTok, that's where I hang out a lot. So my handle is the same on both, Devin Lee OBM.
Excellent. Again, I'll link all those in the show notes. And thanks so much for coming on, Devin. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like to connect with me or get in touch, then head on over to my website. If you like the episode, then I'd love it if you could leave me a review in your chosen podcast app. Your feedback is much appreciated. See you next time.